Then, hey everybody, I'm Dana Austin, and you are listening to the Next Level Awareness podcast, where we talk about building businesses, boundaries, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and all other kinds of topics that you maybe haven't even thought of. So today I'm talking to Lori Marie with Divine 24, and she does astrological readings. You've got a podcast. Tell me all about what's Divine 24.
So Divine 24 is basically under the umbrella of all things 24. So basically, my work under Divine 24 is everything metaphysical, spiritual. I coach people through into self-awareness through the catalyst of astrology. And when I do my readings or my coaching sessions, I the astrology opens up the communication because astrology is pretty on point when you have like the accurate birth information. So long story short, that allows people's energy to open up, and then that is when spirit comes through and my intuition kind of comes into play, and I'm able to really tap into the messages that go along with it. And I like to give tools to my clients when I go through their charts and when I see how the cosmos are affecting them. And then it leads into the next 6 months, the next year, and I record it, and then they come back, and a year later they'll say, yeah, you told me blah blah blah. And I was like, I did. And it's because I get into a channeled state where I'm just saying the first thing that comes through.
Yeah.
And that's literally how you know if you're getting a reading from somebody, that it's authentic. If it just comes out, and they're not like trying to it doesn't sound perfect. It literally just kind of flows through.
Yeah.
That's advice to most people, because in this industry it's really hard to know who to trust and whatnot. But so Divine 24, my goal, as you stated in your introduction, is self-awareness. I
Mhm.
feel like self-awareness is key. Once people know self-awareness and they go within, because everything that happens outside of us comes from inside of us. So you were speaking prior to the podcast about being an Aquarius,
Mhm.
and how your thoughts, can kind of be all over the place, and you're an idea person, and so, but that means inwardly, that's how you are, and so it will project outwardly into your life outside of you. And so teaching people, about things that just come natural to them, that they don't ever put words to or thoughts to, helps them start to know themselves. The first time I ever read my chart, I was 14 years old, and I was like, wow, that is me. Like, oh yeah. And then I started to learn about myself, and the next step is to know that you're not stuck. You're not always going to be like that. Now that you know, and it pops up in everyday life, it teaches you to be more mindful. So
Yes.
and that's really goal, is to be self-aware so that you're mindful in the moment. Knowing is half the battle. When you were a kid, did you ever watch the Super Friends?
Super Friends. I don't
Had
remember.
like Wonder Woman and the Invisible.
Probably. Yeah.
They would do a break in the cart between the Saturday morning cartoons, and they would come on, and they're like, knowing is half the battle. And it always stuck with me, and it's true.
Yeah.
Once you know yourself, it
Oh, yeah.
really is half the battle.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. That's kind of why I started this podcast, because I just feel like, like I said before, and I've had my mother-in-law on the podcast. She's also an astrologer, and I love talking to all kinds of different people about this, because I just feel like, nobody, when we're growing up as kids, there, like, you just didn't hear about people talking about self-awareness and just understanding who you are as a person. And so I think I mentioned earlier before we started recording that I just, as a kid, I felt like I knew a lot of people. I was in a small town. I just never really felt like I fit in. And I really kind of would have like one good friend at a time. So I didn't like being in groups of people. And I still, even as an adult now, I feel like being in a big room, I don't necessarily want to be the center of attention. I don't necessarily want to be the main speaker or anything. I don't need all that. But I do find myself where I'll start talking to one person, and I feel like one-on-one is very like, that's where I really thrive for some reason. And so I've kind of stuck with it. But yeah, like understanding yourself is half the battle, because once you do understand, then you can use those things to your strengths and actually apply that to your life. Because the whole time, if you don't know, you're just like trying to figure out why do I do this? Why is this such a struggle for me? And if
And
you just
you
find
have
out,
you
yeah,
repeat the same problem over. So
yeah,
you hear about people and their relationships, and they
yes,
have the same types of relationships over and over, but they
yeah,
don't learn from them. They just go
right,
in the next one. But
yeah,
if they start to catch their patterns,
yes,
then they can stop it.
yeah. And so I was saying about that birthday book. There's a birthday book out there. It has every day of the year, and the meditation on not meditate, well, there's like every day has like its own little specific like kind of advice or whatever. And each day has the day of something, and mine is the day of the cool quip, because a lot of times stuff will come out of my mouth before I've actually really had time to think about it. And a lot of times it's hilarious. Like I'll just say something and it's just like people will just be like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Like, and I didn't even think about it, it just kind of came out. But a lot of times the things that come out of my mouth can be extremely harsh and hurtful. And so like that's the thing. On my day it says like the cuts made with the tongue are like harder to heal than those with a knife or something like that. So and so then I've learned that like I kind of have to think about before I say something, like how's this going to be received. And then because I never ever intentionally say something to hurt someone. Just that's just not me. I obviously, you said something
But
also
it
about my
comes from
chart.
a place of authenticity.
Yes,
The fact that you say things that are on your mind and you don't candy coat and you don't like try to find the right words.
yes,
Finding the right words can be graceful. Some people have natural grace,
yeah,
but those who just kind of say it, they're being authentic. It's the one, and what happens is if it offends somebody, all you did was trigger a wound for them, which hopefully, with a little bit of help, they have self-awareness and will realize what the trigger is. I think that blunt directness is a superpower. It's just maybe learning a little grace.
yeah, yeah, I think so. So how do you find when you start teaching people about the self-awareness and like explaining stuff, do you feel like people, is it hard for them to understand sometimes, like, or
No, I feel like I'm a communicator at heart. So I feel like I know how to find the right words. And especially if I'm tapped into their energy, I can try to say it in a way that maybe they will understand. Sometimes you would have to, for a lack of a better word, dumb it down, but you're not really dumbing it down. You're just shifting your energy to match theirs so that you could say it in a way that they would understand. And so really, it's about finding a metaphor, tapping into, their life experiences to find the right words to help them. And sometimes they just don't. They just don't get it. But I believe in planting seeds. So just having the conversation, it's in their brain now. And then, it leaves for another date where they'll hear it again somehow, or
yeah,
they'll read it again somehow. And they'll be like, oh yeah, and it'll give them that aha moment. So
yeah,
I don't feel like any conversation is ever wasted
hmm,
because of the fact that it's a planting it in the subconscious, and when they're at that emotional state or they're ready to receive it, it'll come to that forefront. I mean, we've all had aha moments and we're like, yeah, and they're amazing. I mean, they're my favorite thing. But it feels good to know that when I do a reading with somebody, sometimes it won't register in the moment, but it will later. So, I mean, yeah, that's
yeah.
kind of, yeah.
Well, I've definitely had that where I've gotten a reading from my mother-in-law or something, And so, and she very much what you said, it's like, when somebody's being authentic, because I've seen that where like she says stuff and then she doesn't have she doesn't remember. So we always record it, and she doesn't remember later, but she's just getting those messages and they just come through, and it's like, and sometimes it'll be within a week, or within a few weeks, or I mean, but something usually, and I'll be like, I'm pretty sure, and I'll go back and listen again, and I'm like, yep. I mean, and it's you can't get so specific necessarily, but you just can't deny the fact that it's there,
So, so you just said that she too will give you a reading and then she won't remember it.
Mhm.
And so that means that she is an open channel and she's
Yes.
just channeling source and flowing through, right?
Yeah.
Well, you were saying that, or we were talking earlier about your chart, and I was explaining to you how you have Neptune in your first house, and then, how you are kind of all over the place, or how you like don't like crowds, but maybe
Yeah.
we'll have one friend at a time, right? It's because with Neptune in your first house, you maybe recognize or don't recognize that on some level you're sensitive. You are sensitive, you are open to source. And that's why all these ideas flood through you all the time, because your crown chakra is wide open
Uh-huh.
and the source just flows through you. So I try to explain to people, and I am in the process of writing a book to basically explain that all knowledge, not like textbook knowledge, but like wisdom knowledge, is just channeled information from source. So, like, there's some kids that are born and they're like 5, 6, even younger at times, and they have this knowledge, and you're like, where did you get that from? And they're just channeling it from source. But that boils down to art. That boils down to people that are really good at athletics, and people that, it everything is channeled energy from source into creation. So I listened to this really awesome podcast the other day where they had a guest on who had a near death experience. His name was Vinny. And I'll leave all the, details out. But at the very end, he said, and in my experience, he's like, I seen the future. And he's like, and when I seen the future, it was people coming together, connecting with people of the same vibration as theirs, living in, tribes or communities, in sacred places and on the earth. He's like, but the difference between then and now is there was no consumerism. It wasn't about selling or buying or any type of, consumption. It was all about creation.
Mhm.
And that was my aha moment when I felt that I suddenly realized literally everything that comes through us is channeled energy, and that's turns into creation. Like what we do with it, what we do with that knowledge is creation. So that kind of put me on the path of an upcoming podcast. Currently our podcast is Deep Thinker Society, and we have conversation based, kind of like you and I are doing,
Uh-huh.
having conversation based on our guests topics. But the new one that we're going to put out is called Wisdom Beyond Time, and it's going to be story based, where basically anybody that comes on is sharing an isolated incident or incidents, that could be anything from a near death experience to an out of body experience, or even like a plant medicine ceremony where they gained information and knowledge outside of time and space.
Okay.
But the goal of that is so that when people are listening, they can gain it's like a catalyst.
Yeah.
They can gain knowledge from a source that they may never have, and aha moments from, a way that they never had before. And
Yeah.
so it's just more like those incidences are just channeled, but in a different realm, so to
Right.
speak.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I feel like it's a way to get the message out to people that, like, we all have our unique way of, bringing that information through, and that it's important, and that connection is important,
Yeah.
because I think that's the biggest challenge our society has right now, is
Yes.
that we're so divided. But I think that one by one, as we start becoming self-aware and we start realizing that what happens outside of us is what's going on inside of us, and we start making those changes, that eventually things are going to just completely change.
Yeah, I can see that. And I definitely agree, like, because that message comes through one person, and if that one person doesn't go tell someone about it, then but you've got that creation part where, like, if you can tell the story and then other people are getting it, then you're, instead of sitting in a room telling 5 people, you're sitting on a podcast telling potentially hundreds of people, and they're all getting the same message. It's just the way to get it out. And it kind of is interesting that, I mean, if you think about it, like, we've talked a lot about the age of Aquarius, and Aquarius being technology, and a lot of that. So it just makes a lot of sense to me. But
Yeah, and if you look at it too, so AI is a big thing right now, right?
yes,
But and then people are, some people are like doing the fear mongering in regards to AI taking over the world, blah blah blah. But really, if you look at so we are just consciousness and we're just experiencing it in a physical body, right?
right.
But Dolores Cannon was a quantum healer, and she wrote many books on her clients who she would take into the deepest state of awareness, and they would channel awareness of consciousness in what was thought to be other timelines or other worlds or whatnot. But really what it was is it was them becoming aware of consciousness somewhere else. So there were times where they were describing it, because we're filtering it through a 3D mind, right?
Mhm.
Out into this world. And in order to understand it, it doesn't always articulate right. People say, I can't find the right words to describe it. But one incident that I talk about often is where they're describing it, and it comes to find out that they were literally just consciousness floating through the air, and they were like maybe a molecule or dust, but they were experiencing everything. They didn't have a physical body at all. And then there was other times where they were in another world and another being, and everything was hard to explain too, because we can't articulate that in the 3D mind. So the long story of this is that we are channeling consciousness, but we could tap into any of it at any time. And so, like, when people read books and they relate to that book, they're like, wow, I feel like I've lived that before. Like, I feel so connected to that. Or when they watch a movie and we get so sucked into it, we feel like we become a part of it. It's because, how when you hear people say we're all connected,
Mhm.
well, that's because we all are connected. It's to the point where we literally have all experienced each other's lives and consciousness and awareness and channels. There's no words that have never been said before. There's no experience that's never, everything all at once,
Right.
all at once. And so when we connect with somebody else, that's the connection. We've experienced it before. It's familiar. So now we're connected. And that's the end goal. The end goal is to be open channel of source so that we can all interconnect to what's familiar. But right now we're in a 3D consciousness where we're pushing each other away.
Hmm.
But once we start realizing who we are, and that's why they say wake up, we're
Yeah.
waking up. It's because we're waking up to becoming aware of our consciousness.
Hmm.
And we're not really individuals. We're really just looking at a mirror of a projection of a projection of a projection. Does that make any sense?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It
kind of
does.
wild. It's kind of hard to grasp
It
it.
is. It is. It's like there's like, yeah, I could go down a rabbit hole, like, just thinking about that stuff, because that's just how my mind works.
Yeah.
So um yeah, I'm an idea person. So even just thinking about, like, I have to stop myself sometimes from thinking about stuff, because I'm just like, I can't go down that road right now. I have to stay here.
So imagine then people that also, because we all have unique ways that we experience it. So let's talk about those that are mentally ill.
Uh-huh.
and they're hypersensitive or they're hyper aware. But guess what? They're aware on multiple levels at multiple times. So they're hearing voices, and well, guess what? They really are hearing those voices because their awareness is in more than one reality at a time. And
Mhm.
there's really nothing wrong with them. It's just that this 3D reality is so hard to like interpret. People say, feel it from your heart, and but we get into our mind, right? Well, the mind is the ego and the mind are our detriment. That's what makes this experience so challenging.
Yeah.
Like, we have to turn our mind off. For you, I don't think it's always your mind. I think that you just are so open up there in the brain area, in the chakra area,
Mhm.
the crown chakra, that so much comes through, and it's all just like all these little brain waves are, getting triggered, and neurons, and you can see all the different directions, and it makes you want to go all those different directions.
Yeah.
But you're here and now, and you need to be grounded in order to like experience. And that's why mentally ill people struggle, because they don't know how to stay grounded when
Yeah.
their brains are grabbing all that other information at the same time.
Yeah. Staying grounded is hard.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
really hard. But, I mean, and but that goes back to the self-awareness thing, is like, I've learned that about myself. And so, I have figured out, I got divorced from my first husband in 2013, and then I started doing a lot of work on myself with boundaries, because up to that point I had realized that I'd become very codependent, and I had a lack of boundaries to protect myself from other people, because I just you want so bad to help people who have been through something horrible or had a bad childhood or whatever. And then I had to realize, that like I had to not feel so bad about leaving, because I had to save myself. And it's not that that person was on purpose harming me. It was just the situation had become toxic because of our relationship to each other and the codependency and all of the other stuff that was going on. And it's like, you get to a certain point and you can't fix that, like, while
Whereas
you're
if there were
there.
boundaries along the way, it might have played out differently.
Maybe, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe, but I just didn't have anyone, I was very young when I moved away from home, and I moved a long way from home, and I just don't, like, I didn't really have a lot of good adult role models, I think, in my life at the time. And so I was watching all of these other people that were older than me in their relationships, and I was using their experiences as the kind of what not to do in a lot of cases. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I learned a lot in a way. And then eventually I was like, okay, I've seen this person and this person and this person. They've seen their experience. If I don't change what I'm doing now, that's what's going to happen to me. And so I was like, the only way I knew to change it was just to get out. And so that's how and so I learned a lot of boundaries. And then I did a lot of, I learned a lot about myself in that time, just because, I had always been attached to someone. I mean, I went from living with my parents, living with him, and I never knew myself. Like, I never
You
even,
did know yourself, then you went through the integration process where you
right.
started to integrate it into your life. And then you realize that you thought you learned everything, and then you have new things to learn all
Oh yeah.
over.
Right. There's always more to learn. I mean,
Yeah.
there just always is more to learn. And I think that's what I think more people need to realize, that is like, you know,
If
because I
you
looked
think
around when
you
I
have
think I was probably
anything,
like in my early 30s, and I was sitting there going, is this really all there is? Like, is this what life is supposed to be? Like, you just get a job and then you have some kids, and then you just do this for 20 years, and you go to the same job every day, and you do this, like, that's why people feel like a rat in a wheel, because they're
yeah,
literally living the same life over and over again. It's Groundhog Day over and over again. If you don't, and then so, like, once you start learning how much more there is to learn out there, and then you just like keep going on that, it's like you should kind of become a different person every 5 years if you're doing.
that's why people need to travel.
Yes.
Because those who like stay in their hometown their whole life are the least likely to change
Yeah.
because they're in their comfort zone. You don't learn anything in your comfort zone. You learn everything out of your comfort zone. And I did a plant medicine ceremony in Tucson, Arizona. And the takeaway for me in that was I need to learn and to tell others is we need to learn to be comfortable, uncomfortable, because that's where you learn. So like we don't need to numb every pain. We don't need to take ibuprofen every time we have a headache. We don't need to have wine every night to unwind to let go of the day. We need to sit on our couch and feel what we went through in that day so that we could process it and let it go.
Yeah.
Otherwise, when we go and we sit on our couch and we drink that glass of wine, we are holding on to the energy of the day. We're not letting it go.
Mhm.
And we didn't process it. And guess what? It's going to show up in a backache in a few weeks or a shoulder pain in a month. We need to learn to be uncomfortable so that we could feel, process, and let go.
Yeah. That's, I would definitely agree with that.
And people don't want to. We live in a society where we Google all our symptoms. We
Yeah.
Google, like, what's wrong with me? Why is it like that? Well, if there's something physically wrong with you, your body is telling you, it's screaming at you
Yeah.
that you have trapped energy there because something's out of whack and you didn't process it in the past.
Yeah.
So, um, you know, that's why we need to just suck it up sometimes. And some people are just so sensitive that they can't. Like my daughter has a sensory processing disorder, and she can feel and think, and she's like hyper aware and hyper focused, and she's like hypersensitive with touch and hypersensitive with taste, and so she doesn't know how to self-regulate because she's overstimulated in all those senses.
Yeah.
So on that note, that's where drug addiction comes from, or that's where alcoholism comes, into play, because they need something to like even keel so that they can live in our society. It's we live in really unique times, but I think that as we start to recognize what is happening and we allow ourselves to feel it, look at our shadow, look at our flaws, you know, once we allow and once we see it, we might not like it. I went through a phase. You were talking about how, you went through your learning. Well, for me, for many, many, many years, I wouldn't even look in a mirror. Like I would look in a mirror to get ready, but like if we were in the grocery store, or no, like the department store when they have like the mirror in the middle aisle, I would never look. Or if I was like not feeling good about myself, I would look in a mirror, but I would kind of look past myself, because I wasn't feeling good. And so therefore, why would I want to look at myself?
Mhm.
Right. But once I allowed myself to do that and started looking at the things I didn't like about myself, I started realizing it wasn't half as bad as I thought it was. And I was the one focused on it. Nobody else was focused on it.
Yeah.
And so but when we focus on it, we amplify it. So then
Yeah.
other people bring it to our awareness. And then they're like, you know, they might not have even have said it if we hadn't been like projecting it.
Right. I've definitely had that experience too. Definitely. Yep. And I think I've gotten a little bit better about that myself lately. And part of it, some of it I just think comes with age, comes with just getting
Experience.
to the point where you're like, you know what, I just don't care to be so upset or uptight or whatever about that thing anymore, because then when you start to realize, and that I think I just said this the other day. So I'm part of the leadership team for I'm a financial advisor, and then we train our agents on stuff, and we were talking about just time management, like, and how it's so easy for people to just get sucked into like all the other things that are going on because we run our own schedules. Um and I think I said, like something to the effect that, you're not that important. Like, we make ourselves, because we're having this experience and we're in our head and it's my consciousness, I'm the center of the universe, right? And
But
so
you know
like,
what? You sort of are. You
Yes,
still
yes,
are.
yes.
Yeah.
But I just mean like in the idea of like in this case, we were talking
Right.
about um somebody said, oh, but I have to talk to my family, and I probably waste a lot of time talking to these people all day. And it's like, yeah, well, so what I realized is I went through some stuff a few years back where I was having to go get some acupuncture and massage and stuff like that. And when I walk in there, they're like, take off your watch, take off your phone, turn it off, put it in the corner. You're unplugged, for that entire hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it was. And then I would come back to my phone and I would always be like, oh my gosh, I have all these notifications, from all these things that were happening. And I was like, I realized that it was such a shock to me after an hour or two, because I never am detached from my phone for that long. So like over an hour, unless I'm doing a podcast or with a client or something like that, that phone's going off with notifications all day. And so I was talking to them. I was like, if your phone rings, there's only a few cases, like unless you have someone that you're, a child who's home alone or something, or and I have a friend who's got a kid with a medical problem. So like unless that's your situation, every other notification can be turned off. You're not that important to where like you're holding the world up because they need you right this second. Like you
Yeah,
don't
no,
need to
it'll go on
respond to
without
that
you.
stuff.
Yeah.
They'll be okay without you for a little bit. And it's like I finally realized that at one point. I'm just like, you know what? I don't have to answer the phone every time it rings. I don't have to respond to every text just like that. And our society right now, I've seen it with my kids. Just they they're kind of like me, like my daughter for sure. Like if she was at work, she couldn't have her phone on her, and then her friends started giving her crap because she didn't answer within the time period that they thought was appropriate for her to answer their texts. And I'm like, what's wrong with us? Like we just think because we're so connected, that's the and you just said it, like we're not actually as connected as we think,
Yeah.
and it's like really skewed if you think about it, because yes, we're connected by technology, but people don't get together as much in person as we used to. And we need to bring that back,
Yeah.
because it's great to have Zoom. It works awesome. We're able to do this and not have to rearrange our entire lives just to meet up to record a podcast, which is
Right.
amazing. But at the same time, like you and I could almost get more out of a conversation if we were face to face together in the same room, because you can
Well,
feel my energy more.
yes.
And
But
that's what we're not getting from people, is like we just aren't getting the
well, when
full
you
effect.
text somebody, there's only words, right?
Yes.
Or when you write an email, there's only
Yes.
words. Well, where's the tone in that? Where's the body language in the way it was
Exactly.
received, And there's so much miscommunication when you text or when you write. And I learned that in college in a speech class years ago when he was like, you know, we need conversation. But I feel like in general, like language, even the spoken word is so limiting because we put our own definition to words.
Yeah.
And then there's multiple definitions to words. And then the way you relate to a word might be different than the way I relate to a word. So really, if we're in the same room together and we're saying something, you should be able to feel what I'm saying along with what I'm saying. There's so many facets to
Yeah.
it. And I really feel like someday, and maybe not in our lifetime, that we won't need words because we'll finally be connected enough that we could just be in each other's presence and kind of know
Hmm.
someday. Like
Yeah.
sometime. And I believe it'll be in the Aquarian age for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Or the Aquarian age might be the catalyst because I can imagine it actually happening in the Pisces age because Pisces are feelers through and through and super psychic and intuitive. And so, yeah, that might be, but I don't think I'll be around in the Pisces age. Not this me, but
yeah,
I,
yeah, right. Yeah. I know. It's just it's really interesting to think about all that stuff. And so you always like like you talk to people and then you come back later and see how they're doing and check in with them. And so like tell me about your coaching and all that stuff.
Yeah, I believe that any session I have with somebody is a coaching session.
Mm-hmm.
Some people come and that's specifically what they would want,
Okay.
but I literally in my readings, I still feel like it's a coaching session because, I start to channel what comes through and it gives me the advice on, what they need to hear and what they need to process. And then I try to find tools that help them go down those, steps. I'll, if it's a healing thing, I might ask them if they want to do energy work on another time, or I might tell them that, spirit is already doing it in the moment, or I at times can do it without even, using my hands around their energy. Or it's happening. It just depends on the situation. Because there are times where I'm sitting in a conversation, and just because I've been able to open up their energy centers and communicate with them, that's all their guides or spirit needed to do to be able to get in there and shift their energy.
Uh-huh.
Was they needed to open up. They needed to be open to it. And we live our days, like you just said, we get so busy and so wrapped up into the text messages and blah, 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 right? That we are tuned out. And
Mm-hmm.
just sitting and having deep conversation is enough to tune you in because you're like you're listening, you're aware, you're receiving, you're open to receive. And that's what it takes. You need somebody to be open. Have you ever, I mean, well, maybe not because you're not a reader, but you might understand where you're sitting, you're talking to somebody and you're trying to like get them to um open up or like understand what you're saying, and it doesn't matter what you say or how you say it. They're just they kind of
Not
stay
getting it.
stoic and their body language doesn't change, and it's because they aren't open to receive. And there's people, oh, the skeptics. People that are skeptic are the most closed,
Oh yeah,
and
for sure.
they'll come to the table and in their mind, nope, 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 nope,
Yeah,
right?
they're not gonna accept anything that you say because they already, but I mean, and that like makes me wonder why they're there in the first place. I mean, they must have gotten pushed to go there by someone or something. And but it's like to me, I go, okay, well, if you're open to go to something like this, you have to at least listen and see if they, like because I know people who are definitely not open-minded about stuff, but you're right. I mean, and maybe I'm not a reader, but I definitely have when I talk to people, my clients, when people come to me for financial help, I have to ask them certain questions. They have to open up. They have to like understand what I'm teaching them about their own personal financial situation. And sometimes they literally are just, they're like, they just
The
don't
trick
get it.
is finding the tool that in the way that they process. So like that's why I use astrology because I know that when they look at the chart, they're not knowing what they're looking at, right? But I still use the tool because as I show them and I talk them through it, and it gives them something tangible to relate to, and then they're focused on it. And then they're open to receiving what I'm saying because I'm having them focus on it, right?
Okay.
They might not really comprehend it, but they're focused on it. They're seeing, they're following it. And then they're listening to the keywords because that's all that really matters. And they're, oh, that rings a bell. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. And those little opens open like in
Yeah.
time and conversation. And so maybe with your clients, for example, if you can't get them to take it, maybe you need to find that tool that opens them up to, do they need to see a chart? Do you
Yeah.
need to like show them and open them up so that they can grasp onto what you're saying?
Yeah.
And if you could just get a little inkling of the open,
Yeah.
and then it's just it goes from there. That's why I use astrology. Astrology is my passion because it woke me up,
Mhm.
and I feel like it's what I want to use to help wake other people up, but you don't necessarily need it. You just got to find what it is, what a person's passion
That
is.
connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely see that. I was gonna ask you something else. Do you want to show? I mean, because I could probably post the video of this on YouTube. So if you want to share your screen and show my chart, because I know you had it pulled up there, and then that way you can kind of like give an example.
Sure.
Um,
Okay, do you see it?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. So, let me get rid of a couple
And
little.
this is like just to for people who maybe don't know,
Yeah.
this is my natal chart, which is going from this is the time I was born. And so this is my like what would you call this? I
So
know
this
it's
is your natal chart. This is your birth wheel, your natal chart. And so what we're looking at here, so okay, this is how I explain it.
mhm,
When we're born and we take our first breath from wherever we are on the planet, okay, we take a snapshot of the cosmos right above us at that exact second. And wherever the planets are, whatever constellation the planets are passing through at whatever degree. So all constellations on this chart are 30 degrees apart. So there's 12. So that's 360 degrees apart, right? So you take a snapshot and whatever, maybe it's like just barely into Aquarius. So it might be at like 3 degrees in, or it might be like, almost all the way, and it would be like 29 degrees, but you're not quite, into the next sign yet. So that's what the numbers are. And then these little glyphs are basically the symbols for each planet.
mhm.
So, and they're pretty self-explanatory. So we know you're an Aquarius. So if you can, does it show my
The
arrow?
picture, yeah. Hmm.
Okay, good. So this right here is the sun. So the very moment you were born and you took your first breath at 2:09 a.m. in Bloomingfield, Iowa, the sun was 25 degrees in Aquarius. It wasn't quite into Pisces just yet. But guess what? You're not just your sun sign.
Hmm.
There are other planets that are up in the sky. There's Mercury, which is right here.
Hmm.
And Mercury, the glyph is like this because Mercury is the communicator. So if you could see, it looks like it has antennas.
Yeah.
And Mars is the warrior or the male of the zodiac. And this is like as if it were maybe an arrow that it's shooting, to provide. And then Venus right here is this is the female.
Hmm.
Um, and then Neptune, the planet Neptune is like King Poseidon, of the ocean. And then we have Uranus right here, and Pluto right here. And sometimes there's different glyphs. You might see this look sort of like a P at other times. And then this right here is the moon. And then this is an angle. This is called a node of the moon. So those are very important angles, not necessarily a planet. And then this is Saturn, and then Jupiter. And then this is also an angle. It's called the part of fortune, which, shows you where you have fortune in your chart. So as they take a snapshot of the cosmos and you can see where all the planets are, then it gets placed in this wheel. So on the horizon where the sun was at that moment, the horizon, or not the sun, I'm sorry. So you were in Iowa, and then on the horizon to the east was Sagittarius. It was coming up above the horizon, right? At
Yeah.
about 5 degrees.
Mhm.
And so that means this is the beginning of your first house, Sagittarius. So each house represents an area of your life. And wherever those planets fall at that time, that's where they're going to affect your life. So the first house is your physical self or your persona. So if somebody maybe were to guess your sign, they may potentially guess it to be your first house. The second house is money, wealth, moral values. The third house is communication, community, siblings, local travel. The fourth house is home or inner self, and family, like immediate family. And then the fifth house is children, romance, fun, creativity. The sixth house is your health or your everyday life. How you are in your everyday life or your job per se, not necessarily your career, but maybe the jobs that you do. The
Uh-huh.
seventh house is your close partnerships. So it could be your work partnerships, it could be your significant other, but you're close, you know, maybe your very bestest friend that you're practically in a relationship with. And then the eighth house is the house of transformation. It's the house of like taboo, sexuality. It's a house of other people's money. So you find bankers or realtors often in here, but you also find transformative healers or astrologers in here as well, or people that have like sexual addictions or, you know, very open about sexuality, or the opposite, fearful.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ninth house is higher education, higher wisdom. So it could be religion, it could be spirituality, it could be college, it could be foreign travel. You see people often have placements here when they live somewhere other than where they were born. And then the 10th house is your career and your public image. The 11th house is your friendships, as well as your hopes and dreams, and then any large organizations or humanitarian organizations. And then finally, the 12th house is your unconscious. So, like what lays beneath the surface, as well as your dreams. It's also hospitals and other, you know, like in prisons, hospitals, anything that like restricts you from like being out in the world. So that's like our subconscious. It goes on below the surface.
Okay.
Interesting thing, really quickly, is each house, each planet all correlate to a zodiac sign. So they're ruled by it.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these dynamics we just talked about is why we're never just our sun sign and we're never just our moon sign, because this literally makes a fingerprint of you. You
Mm-hmm.
if you are a sun sign, that is your moon is ruled by a sun sign, you know, like the Leo. So if your moon is Leo, you know, you're gonna be emotional but have characteristics of a Leo. You might show your emotions a lot, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. And then the dynamics between the planets create, you know, the distance between them also create an energy. So there's so much to astrology that people could use to learn about themselves that maybe is hidden from their consciousness, that could help, you know, them become more self-aware.
Yeah. And so I think when I explain it to people, because I'm not like, I really don't, I could kind of look at this and maybe know a little bit just because of where I've been around for the last few years. But when I try to explain it to somebody who really doesn't understand or maybe isn't open-minded enough or just is just like, I don't believe in that stuff. And I try to say, like, you know, it's actually very scientific if you think about it. Because some people think it's just ideas and fooey,
True.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like, you know, you're actually looking at, because and the reason try to explain it to them this way is just because we understand we have gravity here, right? Every planet has its own gravitational pull, and that you can find on anything, you know, any science show about planets, right? They talk about they have all the planets have their own moons, some have more than others, and they talk about their gravitational pull. And if you think about that, like it makes sense that every single different planet would have a different effect on every single person if you're basing it on where you were at the time you were born. And I know that like there's I just, to me, that's what kind of made me come around and go, okay, well, now I understand the bigger
Well,
picture of it.
our Earth is like that. If you think about it, we have people born in different countries within the Earth. So if we looked at each country as if it were a planet,
Yeah.
and the people that come from, you know, the United States maybe looked at like a moon sign, you know, or our moon for
Mhm.
emotions, or Uranus for freedom, because other countries look at us like we have this freedom that we don't really technically have.
Right.
You know, so it would be similar to that as well. It would make sense. Your the way you're explaining makes sense, because you know when we say people come from Africa, we might assume that, you know, they're used to really hot weather and jungle animals, and you know, and so they live maybe more in survival mode or something of that nature, and that's why they behave the way they behave. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I get that.
Yeah. So I know just I know that I am an Aquarius moon, Aquarius sun, sorry, a Virgo moon, and Sag rising. And like
Those are
what's the
the
other?
so most you can get a lot out of, just for anybody who's listening to any horoscopes out there. Listen to the three you just said. Find out your sun sign, find out your moon sign, and find out your rising sign or your ascendant. And if you don't know it, just go to astro.com, plug in your birth information, be sure that you have your birth time pretty accurate. The moon moves fairly quickly and changes quickly, so you need your birth time accurately too. And then when you listen to any of those horoscopes, you can listen to the one that is your moon sign, your rising sign, or your sun sign, and all of them on some level are going to apply to you. For you, you also have Mercury and Mars in Aquarius. So that means the way you communicate is like an Aquarian, and the way you use your energy is like an Aquarian. The way you use your motivational energy. So, you explained that, you get all these ideas and you feel like, you are kind of, you would love to just be a brainstormer as your career. Well, that makes complete sense, because Aquarius, the way you communicate and the way you do and who you are as a person with your sun sign is literally Aquarius, and Aquarius are the inventors, the genius, the resourceful ones of the zodiac. But your moon, which is your emotions, is in Virgo, and they are the workaholics and the perfectionists. And they are idea people too, but they're a little more precise, and they have a healthy balance of skepticism, where Aquarians, they're open. Like they're like open doors. And if you tell them that the sky really is pink, and it's because of blah blah blah, they'll take that in and they'll at least think about it. It maybe it is that, and but Virgos won't. They'll go logically. So
Mhm.
that gives you a healthy balance a little bit in there to kind of like, bring you down to reality a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh, and then so you have Neptune, which is the planet of it could be delusions, illusions, creativity in your first house in Sagittarius. So I mean, you're not, but I could imagine you creatively teaching, and you did say that you have clients that you train, and
Yeah.
but finding that creative niche would really do them well, because it would do you well, because you would thrive in a creative sort of self-expression, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
Your Venus is in Capricorn. And so you were saying before about how you talk. And this is also the Virgo moon. It has that there as well, where sometimes you say things and there isn't a filter and you're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. That's so Capricorn. Like Capricorns have no filter. Virgos don't really have filters either, but they're a little more worried about what other people think. And so they may stop themselves at times from saying things because they know that it's going to come off wrong. But Capricorns, they just don't care. Like they say what comes through, and you have it around the heart. You have it around with your love life. You have it around money, because Venus is not just love. Venus is love and money.
Okay.
And so therefore, you're probably really good with money. So you're in the perfect field. It's in your second house of money. Makes sense that everything you do, but because it's in Capricorn, they love to climb the ladder. So
Mhm.
you're ambitious, you have goals, and you like to achieve them. And you're not going to stop, because somebody else is being a little sensitive today as you try to reach your goal, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Definitely. I definitely have goals. And I definitely feel like I'm climbing a ladder, so that fits perfectly.
Yeah. Uranus, the planet of change, is in your 12th house. And that, Uranus is associated with Aquarius. And the Aquarius is also the rebel of the zodiac. They are rebellious. They just, if the parent says it, they want to do the opposite. It's just their nature.
Yeah.
And so you have it in the 12th house of the unconscious. So you kind of revolt in your own ways when you see injustice. Um, So that's what I've learned. And you also have it in Scorpio. So like you feel injustice like on an intense level. You might investigate things in order to like really, see like behind the scenes, like, behind the scenes investigation so that you could kind of like make a change in your own way. Then you have Pluto in your house of career. Pluto is transformative. Pluto is the one that will self destruct to build itself back up. And in your 10th house, your life, your career is going to be your life. And that's what's going to it's going to be the catalyst that transforms you. But with that, like I said, it's ruled by Scorpio, and they're kind of like the phoenix. They will literally break themselves down in order to build themselves back up. And as you were saying, you learned the hard way in the past, but you stopped yourself and recognized that if I continue on this way, I'm always going to be that way. And
Yeah.
so therefore you hit rock bottom and you brought yourself back, and you'll always be that way. And you'll be that way in a public way, in the sense that because it's in your 10th house of the public self, is that people may learn from that within you by seeing it in who you are and how you
That's
like.
really cool because I actually like when you said that, I left my former job um back in 2021, and I feel like when you said like I have to like I don't know what like I had to like destroy that. Like I had to walk away from something that I couldn't go back to. And so like I knew when I left there was absolutely no going back. And so like I just felt that when you said it, like because I feel like I completely was just I destroyed everything. And now I'm like it's been a process for sure, but like I'm building that back up now. And so I mean, and you look at it and it's like I see all these people who have been in their lives, they've gotten started and they didn't become who they are until their like later years.
That,
Like we don't have to do this in our 20s. Like you can start something new at any point in your life, and that's where I'm like that's what I'm doing. So
and
it's
here's the
really cool.
observation. We're
Yeah.
Gen X, right? And so we were raised during survival mode. Our parents and their parents, went through poverty and war and famine, and so we were raised by them in those modes. And so, here we are now in a generation where we're finally getting to our goals, right? Finally getting to our goals. But now the generation has shifted, so we're getting our self-awareness now, but the kids that are coming in, they're coming in and learning self-awareness, and then they're going to reach their goals. But a lot of them are reaching their goals. They're diving right in, but they come in with more wisdom. Whereas because we allowed them to come in with that, we
Yes.
weren't allowed to live our life. Like you said, I kind of just sort of, lived in a, normal neighborhood and, vanilla families, I think you put it. And, and you kind of went about life, but kids don't live normal lives anymore.
No.
Like it's super colorful, and there's media coming in every direction, and their brains are super stimulated, and so they're going to be different humans, and they're going to reach their goals much earlier than we reached our
Yes.
goals.
Well, they have access to so much more information than we did. So, that's just like right there. You have access. Like when we were that age, we had to go to the library and find books, and it takes a lot of time to read a lot of different books and find exactly what it is that you need to understand about the topic that you're learning from. But now it's like you can open up 10 different websites and read for an hour and
Click a
find.
button on your phone and say, hey, where do I
Yeah.
find blah 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 blah, and then you're like,
Exactly. Exactly. And the important thing, I think, right now is making sure that you do enough research and you get enough information from enough different places to figure out, like, you have to put all those pieces together and figure out what the truth is. Because, one source of information is not necessarily the ultimate truth. And so you've got to do enough
that's
research to understand.
That's the roughest thing about right now. So if I show you let me see if I can do that here. If I show you a chart oh, it won't let me unless I stop sharing. So basically, where Neptune is at right now in the age that we're going through,
Mhm.
Neptune is creating the blurred lines. Remember how I told you it was like illusions?
Yeah.
It's creating the blurred lines with like technology and with like the media and like so and like AI, how they can just do anything and fool us right now, right?
Yeah.
So that's why when my daughter comes to me and asks me a question about just about anything, if it's true, even like history, because we're learning all the time that history supposedly wasn't what we were taught, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I tell her, you answer the questions, and maybe other people won't agree with this, but I say you answer the questions that they teach you out of the book because society needs you to go to school for your degree. I said, but as a human, I said, you take what feels right and leave the rest because you weren't there. Unless you're ever there and you ever hear it or see it for yourself, you never really know. That goes with religion, that goes with history, that goes with what you hear down the street, that goes with anything you hear. You always take it with a grain of salt, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not, and so I don't know. I can only tell you what I know, but what I know is what I've seen and heard and felt, and that to me is right. But they're really, I mean, we're at the point where very little things are facts anymore,
Yeah.
and what were facts aren't facts,
Right.
finding out,
Yeah. Yeah. It's so frustrating these days because you just don't know.
Yeah, so we really do need to become self-aware because in order to filter through the craziness that we're living in, we have to be in tune with our intuition. We have to, use that pineal gland and tap into our third eye and really like look beyond the words. Like I tell people all the time, sometimes you need to feel between the lines, not read between the lines. You
Right.
need to like feel it out, and if it doesn't feel like a hell yes, if it doesn't feel like yes, then it's not, don't do anything, just wait until you feel a yes, and
Yeah.
that could be from driving down the road, if going left or going right, you know if it feels like you're going and all of a sudden you're like, I don't know why, but I feel like I should go this way, then go that way, because there's a reason why you're being drawn that way. And then we're teaching ourselves, my daughter and I, because we get irritated in the traffic. I'm out here in Queen Creek, I think you are as
Yeah.
well,
Uh-huh.
and you know how bad it is, right?
Yeah.
Especially with the snowbirds. And and so we're trying to make a habit of, when we're being held up, that, oh well, maybe we aren't supposed to be there yet, maybe there's a
Yeah.
reason, and it's not easy because of our human
Right.
impatience, but it's what gets us through. Okay, well, maybe, when we do get there, that's exactly when we're supposed to be there. But if we listen clearly, sometimes I'll go a different direction
Yeah.
altogether, and everything will be fine.
Yeah. I do the same thing. There's so much road construction here and you just never know. And it's like, you go the way you think you're gonna get there the fastest, and it
Oh,
just
you said it.
like,
You said think. That's it. You just said think. And that is, you go the way you think.
yeah.
And really, you shouldn't go the way you think. You should go the way that feels right.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to do that more because, man, I just get caught up. Thankfully, I work from home mostly, and then I go to my office, which is, I don't really have to go through Queen Creek to get
Yeah.
there. Thankfully, because man, it is just like, oh
Once you start getting, and this is where we'll all eventually be, once we all start living from our intuition sense, and balancing it with, our other senses, we start getting in what's called the flow state.
mhm,
And people get in the flow state all the time. You have athletes, you have people that they look like they're running to the finish line, and they're succeeding, right? It's because they learned to listen to that hell yes. They learned to listen to go in that direction. And it was something that I gradually had to accomplish on my own, because, when we think we know what's best, or when we want something, but the universe needs us to go a different direction, and we're not in a partnership with the universe or God or the divine or whatever word people want to use, then they're going to put obstacles up and then we're going to fight through it. But if we listen to, channel source as it comes through us, and it says to, even if it's the most outside the box thing, you go that way because that's going to be the easier path. That's going to be the way that's going to get you there the quickest. And you might think it looks so weird over here. It doesn't make any sense. Why am I going this way? And then you go through some craziness, but eventually it brings you back around because you listen to source and you listen to that energy, and bam, it gave you exactly what you wanted. And I kid you not, I know that I've been in the flow state for about a year and a half, 2 years now, because I'll walk up to timers right when they go off. I'll open my laundry room right when the buzzer goes off.
Yeah.
I will pull up to the light right when it turns green. And it's uncanny. It's like, and then when my daughter's with me, she looks at me and she's like, "I know, mom." She's like, "It's mom timing." I tell her it's mom timing instead of
Yeah.
the time. She's like, "It's mom," and I said it's because I listen to my intuition. I said, and
Yeah.
I just go with, and some people look down on that. Some people
Oh,
are
of
like,
course.
it's woo woo. What do you mean
Yeah.
you follow your intuition?
Yeah. And I think, one of the words that has come up for me a lot is synchronicity. And so like I think I don't, maybe not in the same way, but I really am trying to get into that state because I have, like, the last year and a half for me, like I've been thinking way too much, thinking and thinking. And like I just feel I should have trusted my gut and just felt and trusted what I was feeling instead of overthinking it and fighting against it. And I mean, like you just said it, like I was struggling with some stuff for a long time, and I just like, there
So
comes a point and you just give up and you're like, okay, fine, I got to go with it because I just can't fight this anymore. And ever since then, like it, it's just, especially in the last like week and a half, 2 weeks, it's just been like everything is going my way for some reason. And
that's
it's just
good.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm trying to just, and I'll even say like sometimes when I have one of those ideas, it's like I don't even know where this came from, but this is what it is, and I'll just put it out there, and I try to just like, I just say stuff because it's in my head and I've got to get it out and I've got to tell somebody and I've got to talk it through. And sometimes, it doesn't really work out right, but it's like there's a reason
Might
behind
have
my
planted
head.
a seed for somebody else just by saying it.
Yeah.
You could have potentially given somebody else an aha moment just by, and that's why brainstorming's so fun, because
Yeah.
you could see something that could make them think something, which could make you think something, and then it turned into like nothing either one of you imagined.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, how you find yourself thinking too much. And that is why, I'm out here in Johnson Ranch and Queen Creek, and the kids out here, find themselves in trouble all the time, and there's not enough for them to do. And then you have the senior community, the snowbirds, and then they don't have enough to do. And I'm all about, getting in tune with that spot. And during COVID is, when the world was insane, I found two things inadvertently. I was guided to nature and I was guided to coloring. And so that leads over to what, I have Divine 24, but I have Inner Vision 24, which is I'm creating an art studio out of my garage until eventually I'll have a center. We'll be all inclusive and I'll partner with people in the community. But what I've learned is we can rewire our brain and our habits literally by tuning out with just coloring or neurographical art, which is, it puts you into that flow state. It puts you into that zone. And I didn't even know it worked until I started consciously doing it. And then, things started playing out for me naturally. And I'm like, wow, it's because I tuned out. I'm tuning out and I'm allowing, so when we get into a flow state, um, or we get into the tune out state, we are opening our crown chakras more to what comes through without our brain. So if you ever catch yourself doodling, because your brain's always going, right? But if you catch yourself doodling, that's your brain's way of trying to collaborate into a mindful state. It's trying to bring you to a mindful state. So what I do now is all, Saturday morning or whenever I have a free time, or Sunday morning, I sit in my chair with my coffee and I do art. And other people do it in other ways. Some people go hiking. It puts your brain in that state. But but if you can be mindful, you can rewire your brain, because when you're in that state, you catch your thoughts.
Mhm.
You catch what you're thinking about, and you have the opportunity as soon as you catch what you're thinking about, because everything else slows down, right? Everything around you slows down when you're in that state. You can change your thought. I catch myself thinking about things, but then I catch myself channeling more. And I now know, because I know how to naturally get myself into that state. I now know when people are thinking about me. People pop into my head randomly all the time, and I'm like, oh, I can feel it. They're thinking about me, or they're talking about me, or people used to say if your earrings, but literally I get into that state, and then the phone will ring and they'll call like 5 minutes later, or something else will happen, and it'll be like the universe confirming, that it happened. And so that's why I try to, especially with kids, they don't even know that that's what they're doing when they're doing art, or when they're coloring, or whatever it is that you're passionate about, you get in that state. So with art, with kids, and with older people, and whoever wants to do it, I am trying to teach them how to become mindful, how to get into that state. And it's the best thing for you. It's meditation. It's
Yeah.
what it is. It's meditation.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I really hate to end this, but I don't want it to go on forever, and I want to be mindful of your time. So, tell me how people get in touch with you. Do they get readings? I mean, like, do they come to your house? Do you do Zoom readings? Like, how do people get a hold of you?
I do both. So, for, services, they can reach out to me through divine24.org. And if they live in the Queen Creek area, I could do it in home. I will start up the mindful art. It'll be art in general. It won't be, I think mindful takes away from it, and they think that it's something else, but it's really fun, creativeness. But I'll be doing it in the home in the winter when it cools off. But I do readings. I'm doing an astrology class for beginners in the end of June. So if they go to divine24.org, they can see that there too. And if they just want to listen, have some seeds planted through conversation, evolve24.org is where our podcast is at. It's called Deep Thinkers Society. And then we are looking for guests for season 2. So if you have a topic you're passionate about, jump online, and fill out the guest form. And then also we're looking for guests for wisdom beyond time. So anybody who's had a near-death experience, maybe they've had shamanic journeying, or maybe plant medicine ceremony, or out-of-body experiences, or anything where they were outside of time and space and experienced wisdom and have a story to share. We're looking for those stories so that other people can learn from them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, and hopefully everybody subscribes and follows you, and however they need to get in touch with you. So thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed this. I hope we can do it again.
Mhm.